Hi, and welcome to the Days Gone podcast. I'm Claire Weaver, a screenwriter, author, and Days Gone fan, and this podcast is a place to discuss the game in all its glory, share my opinions, both popular and unpopular, and listen to me fangirl over one of the best games ever made. There will be spoilers ahead, so continue at your own risk. Welcome to the Freak Show. I'm back from my cross-country van trip, and it feels so good to have the PlayStation controller back in my hands. I missed it so much. And you know what else I missed? My favorite YouTuber and Days Gone expert, Spawnicus Rex. So I figured I'd bring him back on the podcast. Hello, Rex.
Hello, Days Gone podcast. How we doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fan-fucking-tastic. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. You are such a great guest, and it's always a pleasure. So today I want to talk to you about Boozer, because he is an integral part of the Days Gone story and of Deacon's arc. And I've wanted to do an episode on Boozer for a long time, just because he's such an awesome character. And I have a lot of thoughts about him. So I figured that's something that we could talk through today. Do you want to start with first impressions? What did you think of Boozer the first time you played the game?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and actually, I think that is a fantastic topic for the podcast, just because Days Gone would not be the game, the fantastic experience that it is, if not for Jim Pirri's work on the character Boozer. My first impression of Boozer, and I absolutely mean this in like the highest possible praise, okay? I'm not being sarcastic. This is the highest praise possible. Boozer is like a very loyal dog, okay? And I know you're calling him a dog? What the fuck? No. In the best way, because the best qualities of someone who's just so loyal that they've always got the best opinion of you. Your dog always has the highest opinion of you. Your dog would always see you as the best version of yourself, no matter what. You know, no matter what a shitty person you are, your dog is going to love you anyway, you know? And so that was my first impression. He was like Boozer's, like a Deacon's dog, okay? But in the highest possible praise, not in a smart-ass way.
That's such a perfect way of putting it.
Isn't that adorable, you know?
It is.
But it's like he's always there for you when you need a wingman. Even if you're getting into trouble and doing something that you should not be doing, he's still there for you, you know, and even like in the very first, one of the earliest scenes when they go to Crazy Willie's and Boozer asks him, he's like, okay, how do you want to do this? And I already know it's a bad idea, but how do you want to do this? And, you know, even though I know it's a bad idea, like, I'm here for you, man. Let's do this. Mm-hmm. And that was my first impression of him, was like in the highest possible praise. He's like a really good dog. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, like you say, he's like a wingman. He definitely has Deacon's back. I mean, for me, I think my first impression, it wasn't, I didn't think quite as highly of Boozer as you did. And I didn't think bad of him. He just seemed a little bit like a cliche. And maybe it's, you know, not being a guy, like I didn't get that bro code kind of thing that they were giving off. I get it now, you know, having played the game multiple times and put so much thought into these characters and kind of knowing what they go through. But my first impression was, okay, here's the stereotype. Here's the cliched character.
The sidekick.
Yeah. The biker, doesn't really have much going on, you know. And so much of what you see in those first few hours when he's injured is his pride getting in the way.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like, oh, come on, dude, stop being such a, you know, masculine man who can't admit when he's hurt. Like, it just seemed a little over the top.
I can see that from your perspective now, you know, viewing it as the female perspective there. I can see that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but now, like I said, having played it a lot more, there is so much going on in his character. And like you say, he's such a likable guy. I think I didn't get why he was such a good guy at the beginning, you know, because he seems like the criminal type, you know, he's obviously,
and he is.
Yeah, and he is, but it seems like that's the bulk of his personality. And, you know, shame on me for jumping to conclusions, that was just sort of the first impression I got.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, shame on you for your illusions or whatever. That's one of the things about Days Gone is that at first glance, on the surface, it's kind of like a still pond or a still lake.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really tell how deep it is until you jump all the way in.
Right.
And that's just how it is. At first, you can't tell that there's so much more depth until pulls you all the way in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect metaphor for the game. My first impressions of the game was that it was going to be, maybe 10 hours of fun zombie killing and driving a motorcycle. Like, cool,
Right.
whatever, who cares? It was just going to be filler until I got the next big obsession. Little did I know this was going to be the next big obsession. Probably the biggest obsession of my life, really, if I'm going to be honest.
To date.
To date, yes. So, starting at the beginning with that scene, the flashback scene, the opening scene in Farewell, Boozer doesn't get on the helicopter. He's injured. He doesn't get on the helicopter. Deacon doesn't want to leave Boozer behind, so he stays with him, and they've just put Sarah on the helicopter, and the two guys stay in Farewell against all better judgment.
Right?
It's like you're watching it and you're like, guys, at least one of you get on, or you've got a gun. Both get on. Who fucking tell that scientist to get off? And like you both take like, who cares?
Right. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Helicopter. Yeah. Just snatch somebody else off of there. Oh, look, you've got room for more people now. Let's fucking go. Yeah.
And also the idea that he knows how many they can take because they're already overweight. Like if you're already overweight on a helicopter, you ain't taking anyone. I think. I mean, I would assume.
Right. Well, the helicopter is capable of handling more weight, but it will affect the rate of fuel consumption. So you add to the weight and you're going to be burning fuel faster. You may not have enough fuel to reach your destination.
But they're not going that far. They're really not going far.
Right. Yeah. We know in game it's really not that far, but it's, I guess in that situation, you don't want to be short on fuel. That's like the major theme of Days Gone, right?
Yes, true.
Don't let yourself get short on fuel.
Especially if you're in a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they kind of, it's bad when they run out of fuel, really bad. But yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, okay, Boozer and Sarah are both injured. They both have serious injuries. Boozer's injury wasn't as life-threatening. It was like a gunshot wound in his leg or something. It was like a gash in his leg. I mean, it shows in the cutscene. He's got like a pretty serious laceration on his leg, but I don't know if he was grazed by a bullet or cut or whatever. But he's got a fairly serious laceration on his leg.
And he's limping.
He's limping. He's having difficulty getting around. So you have two injured people, and this helicopter equipped with medics has room for two people. And Deacon, being in otherwise great health, and fully capable of getting himself out of town to meet up with them later, he should have put Boozer and Sarah on the chopper. Now, Boozer wouldn't have gone. No, dude, I'm sticking with you. I'm going to help you get out of town, even though Boozer's the one that's hurt. But what would have seemed better to me, I guess, maybe you're in the moment. You don't always make the best decisions. We're armchair quarterbacking it, years later. But in the moment, you would think like, okay, Boozer, brother, I need you to help me keep my wife safe. Get on there, get yourself patched up, and you keep her safe until I can meet back up with y'all. That's the line. That's all you have to say. I need you with her to keep her safe. It's not for you. I'm not worried about your leg. I need you keeping her safe for me until I meet back up with y'all. And it's that simple. And then Deacon gets himself out of the town, meets up with them or tracks them down wherever. And Boozer has been protecting her, helping to protect her through all the other shit that went down. Perfect scenario, or better scenario.
But that Boozer wouldn't take that. He wouldn't take that spot.
No, not unless it was, you got to sell it right. Because I need you with her to protect her until I can meet up with y'all. Take care of her for me until I can meet up with y'all. Keep her safe for me. From that perspective, they probably would have. Like, oh, Deacon needs me. Okay, I'm there for you, brother. I got this.
Yeah, I suppose there could be a way you could sell it. I think that Boozer, he's the only one who recognizes the love that they have. Remember, he's the only one who shows up to their wedding.
True.
The MC basically doesn't want anything to do with it. And, obviously we know Sarah's family disowned her. So he's the one who gets, these are two people that belong together. I don't think there's any scenario in which he could be convinced to get on the helicopter taking Deacon's spot. He would insist to the end that it's Deacon and Sarah have to stay together.
Okay. Well, you may be right. And we know Deacon wouldn't have gone for that because he knew that Boozer was going to need help getting out of town.
Right. And that's his brother.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, it's as much as, like you say, we can, what's the phrase? Armchair quarterback it from, years after the facts. I think the way it played out is the only way it could go.
Okay. I always figured it was more of a plot device. Like, look, this is just how we did it. Deal with it. Let's get to the next part of the story. You know, and I can live with that, you know.
It does feel like that, but that's the thing. It feels like that at the beginning because you don't know the depth of their relationship, their friendship, this brotherhood that they have. Like you say, Boozer is in the best way a loyal dog, and Deacon is for Boozer as well. So they're never going to leave each other.
Yeah.
Even for Sarah. I mean, if there were 3 spots, then great. If there were no spots, then great. They all stick together.
Yeah.
But when there's only 2 spots, I mean, maybe Deacon and Boozer could have gotten the helicopter and left Sarah behind, but I don't think that was going to happen.
That wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think they're quite that close.
Right.
But yeah, I like your idea the best as far as armchair quarterbacking. I like your idea the best so far. They should have snatched some other asshole off of there and be like, "Oh look, you've got room for 3 people now. Let's go."
Yeah, or just being like, "Fuck it, we'll take the chance on the fuel. Let's just go. Let's just put 3 of us on there and go."
Yeah. So what I have next in my notes that I was thinking, it was what was on my mind while we're thinking about Boozer's character. The way that Boozer would continuously kind of scold Deacon for going up to Sarah's memorial and for, because it makes him really angry and reckless, makes him do dangerous, stupid stuff. Every time he goes up there, he starts getting in that mood, and at first I really didn't get that. I didn't get Boozer scolding him because, I mean, Deacon is grieving. You have to let him grieve in his own way. Now, sure, he needed to keep his head on straight and not be so reckless because, the world that they're in is very dangerous. You need to keep your head about you and keep your wits about you. But nobody gets to decide how they process grief. And nobody has any control over how long they grieve. That you can't set a limit or a deadline on that. And it's only been 2 years. And only 2 years, and he had lost his wife with no closure. There was no closure whatsoever. There's nothing but despair, and 2 years is nothing for him grieving the loss of the love of his life. So I really thought it was really insensitive of Boozer to be scolding him and getting on to him for grieving in his own way. And it's not till later when they get to Crazy Willie's, Deacon is out of his fucking mind, being completely reckless and over the top, aggressive and reckless. And it ends up getting Boozer hurt. And Boozer gets hurt bad. It's serious, life-threatening injury. And that was the moment where I realized oh, man, Deacon does need to get his head out of his ass and get his shit together, Okay, Boozer, you're right, man. He's being fucking dangerous and he's got to get it together. And so at first I thought it was really insensitive of Boozer to be that way. But then I realized, man, you're right. You've got a point. This is serious business and he needs to be taking it seriously.
I felt exactly the same when you said that Boozer was being insensitive and like pushing him. I was like, I think that maybe is what rubbed me a little bit the wrong way with him at the beginning. Not that I disliked Boozer, I just didn't have any reason to feel sympathy or to empathize with him or to really see him as anything other than a plot device. Because that's kind of how he feels in those first couple hours. But that scene in the tunnel, the first tunnel you have to clear, and Deacon walks point with the shotgun, and you see that moment where, I mean, Boozer himself says you got a death wish. And it calls him, I think, reckless or whatever. And you see that sort of that fire in Deacon's eyes, that vengeance that he wants, that rage, and he just wants to burn the whole fucking world because he's just angry, and that is not going anywhere. And you're like, whoa, okay, I get the grieving process, but to be angry for 2 years in a very dangerous world is not a good place.
And that's like, he really wasn't grieving properly. He was just, he was allowing that rage to keep him from feeling the grief.
Yeah, that's the thing that I love
it was
about
more of a
it.
defense mechanism than it was a grieving process.
Yeah, it's not about healing and processing.
Yeah,
It's
healing.
about
That's the word I was looking for.
It's about staying in one place, and that place being anger. Yeah. That's what Deacon, and that is what really kind of hooks my heart about the story is the and I've said this on another episode, Deacon's unwillingness to let himself grieve, that resistance to it, that really just grabs my heart and squeezes. And it just, every time I think about it, I get emotional and I'm just like, I fucking love this game. I love this story. And I love, there's just something cool about the way it explores that very, very specific moment of an emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And that cutscene, and really that just goes, for me, it goes not just into John Garvin's talent for writing and telling a story, but Sam Witwer's acting. Because, he did pretty much all the motion capture for Deacon. So his acting and and all it is, it's a motion capture suit and his voice, and that's really all we have. But to put so much energy and so much emotion into those two things so that we can feel it coming through in the game, it's just fucking incredible casting,
It is. It blows my mind every time I watch the cutscenes. I just love the micro expressions, the tiny little movements, the body language. The body language just sells it. And then the nuance in the voice, the way when a line is delivered, the actor had two choices. They could either bring it up and be, loud and angry, or they can bring it down and they can just be
and make it sincere
sad and melancholy and sincere. And there's some cool moments. There's a scene with O'Brien that springs to mind when he finds out some information about Sarah, but then is like, no, she's definitely dead. That other camp she was taken to was overrun.
That one also got overran. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that point, Deacon was getting his hopes up. He was already kind of getting his hopes up. Like, no, wait, maybe? Oh shit, no, that camp was overrun too. Yeah.
That's so good. Speaking of excellent acting, so the one scene in particular between Deacon and Boozer that I actually want to play every fucking time I watch the scene, I'm amazed by the acting. It is incredible. So I'm going to hit play on this. We're going to take a listen.
Hey, how'd it go?
Oh, what go?
Goddamn well, your guy in the spacesuit, what'd he say?
It doesn't matter.
Hey, come on, goddammit.
Boozer, you really don't want to be doing that right now.
Oh, yeah? You think I need more than this to take down your scrawny little ass? Come on, what'd he say?
Drop it.
Seriously, what happened to Sarah? Huh? Where's your old lady?
Where's your old lady?
Huh? Stay down, brother. Had enough? Where's your old lady, Deke?
She's dead, Boozer. Sarah's dead.
Yeah, and she's been dead a long time, so don't you think that you mourned her long enough?
I think that you have a hell of a left hook, asshole. Oh.
Yeah, it's the only move I got. Come on, man.
Oh.
I gotta get my sorry ass back to work. Camp ain't gonna feed itself. It's the only move I got. Still, I tagged your ass with it 3 times in a row.
Fucking shameful.
I love that scene.
Yes, that's one of my favorites too. And I can totally relate to that myself. Because I have an older brother, and okay, so growing up, we got into throw down, knock down, drag out fights a few times, and it's just one of those things. It's I know exactly where they're both coming from in that moment,
Yeah, and it goes back to what we've talked about before with how all of the characters have such a unique point of view. They all have somewhere they're coming from. And in this scene, you see the 2 points of view, like in contrast to each other. And each of them has a thing they're trying to say.
And I really think, part of that was a tactical decision on Boozer's part, because he knew that Deacon needed one of two things. He needed to either get a little aggression out, or he needed to get his ass kicked. One of those things would make him put the brakes on and get a reality check and be like, okay, all right, I got some bad news, but you know what? We're going to keep on keeping on, and we'll deal with things as they come. But I think Boozer kind of instigated that and kept escalating the tension until it resulted in Deacon getting knocked on his ass and getting a bit of a reality check.
Right. It's also, there's an interesting thing that's dropped in there. There's the reference to Boozer's old lady not being around, and which in the moment
that was such a dick move. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, but in the moment you don't fully understand what's being said because you don't know. It's the first time that you've ever.
Where's your old lady?
Yeah, you never thought of, does Boozer have an old lady? Like, where is she? Like, is he just, I don't know, saying something dumb as a comeback because he doesn't have anything better? Or as you find out later, it has meaning because you find out in the drunk Boozer sequence that, Boozer had a wife and she died, and so Boozer is someone who knows what it is like, not only to grieve, but to grieve the death of your old lady.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, that goes into something else. I'm glad you brought that up, because that goes into something else I wanted to bring up about the backstory on Boozer's wife, Joni. Now, when I did like my very first playthrough of Days Gone, I went through and I got all the collectibles and I did everything and I read all the backstories and everything, but that was over a year ago and several playthroughs ago, and I don't remember all of the details. I remember that, Boozer had a wife that he absolutely adored and loved dearly and lost her under, traumatic incident, a car wreck or something like that, but I didn't remember the details of it. And while I was reviewing my notes and doing research for tonight's podcast, I came across the full backstory. And if you don't mind, I want to read this. It's just the brief, like the character collectible.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
This is about Boozer's wife, Joni, which I also didn't know she has an actual grave in the old Pioneer Cemetery that you can visit in game.
I didn't know that either. I found that out doing research. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Right on. Yeah. Okay. So that's just a fucking amazing detail, man. But okay. So here it is. Unfortunately, one night, while the two were riding Boozer's motorcycle along Highway 97, they were struck by an oncoming driver who was heavily under the influence of alcohol. Joni was killed on impact, while Boozer and the occupants of the other vehicle were largely unharmed. Enraged, Boozer murdered the intoxicated driver and his passengers in an act of retaliation for his wife's death. Members of the motorcycle club were called to the scene and arrived before the police. Boozer's best friend, Deacon St. John, had to physically drag him from the scene as they were forced to leave Joni's body behind. They later provided Boozer with an alibi, sparing him from being convicted of manslaughter. Is that accurate? That's straight off the wiki. I don't remember finding that in my playthroughs.
Yeah.
Is that in the art book or something? Or
so in the art book, let me pull it up. Hang on. The stuff about killing the other driver, I don't believe.
Where does that come from? Yeah.
I think the wiki. You're looking at the wiki online, right? The Days Gone wiki. That seems to have some extra info that I haven't been able to verify. There's a few things that I find on there that I'm like, wait, where is that from?
Like, I totally believe it, and I think it's fucking badass. I could just imagine Boozer just ripping these guys out of the wreckage and just beating them to fucking death.
Yeah.
God damn, dude.
See,
I don't know that it's true though.
In the art book, it contradicts that. So It says, before the world ended, we learn his wife Joni was killed in a bike accident. She and Boozer were on a drunken joyride near Crater Lake Highway when Boozer lost control of the bike and put it down. The MC came and got him, but Joni was dead. The MC forced Boozer away so he wouldn't be charged with manslaughter, but that meant leaving her on the side of the road until the accident was spotted many hours later.
So that way he didn't get charged for like the reckless endangerment, driving while intoxicated, stuff like that. And which kind of, that may be part of the guilt that he feels, is that he never faced justice for his mistakes. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. And that sounds closer to what I remember. Because this right off the wiki, but God, it's a badass story though. It's like, I kind of like this version better.
Yeah. But there's also an interesting similarity between Deacon's, grieving for his wife and Boozer's grieving for his wife. The idea of them dying alone, or you not being there with them. Like the idea of having to leave the body seems so cold and so callous and just would really hurt your heart. And, Deacon obviously choosing to not get on the helicopter, leaving Sarah to her fate alone, is kind of the same thing. They mirror each other.
That is interesting. Yeah. I never noticed I never really, I guess, caught the similarity there, but yeah, I completely agree.
Let's talk about the drunk Boozer sequence while we're on the subject. So we have that whole little sequence where Boozer obviously is dealing with the loss of his arm and kind of what that means for his identity, and he's having a really hard time with it. And Deacon comes back into camp and learns that Boozer's got drunk and wandered off.
Yeah.
And he knows that it's something bad is going to happen. So I'm going to play the scene right now where he learns that fact.
Where's Boozer?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? I thought he was with you.
Yeah, he was, and then he took off. Some shit.
What the fuck are you telling me?
Get off me! Look, he grabbed a bottle of whiskey, he said he was going home. I don't know.
Motherfucker, and you didn't even try to stop him, did you?
Hey! We tried! You gotta know when to cut a man loose. You gotta know when a man's done.
You gotta know when a man's done. What a line.
Fuck Schizo.
I mean, you knew I had to have some reason to bring Schizo back into this episode.
Right.
But it's interesting because, I mean, yeah, sure, fuck Schizo. But it's kind of, again, as always, as I end up defending Schizo every single time, he kind of does have a point. Boozer is at arguably a point of no return. Obviously, you find out that Deacon is the only one who can bring him back from that. But I think if anyone else tried, they would fail. Boozer is suicidal. He's done. He's
ready. Nobody could have brought him back from that broken road. Nobody could have brought him back from there aside from Deacon. There's no way.
Yeah. There's an interesting theory that one of our fans, and I say one of our fans because he's a fan of yours first and has I borrowed him as a fan of the podcast, Aussie626.
Yeah, man.
He posted a really good theory on Reddit that got me thinking. He suggested that maybe Schizo was the one that gave Boozer the whiskey in the first place. And he said, and I quote, "You give a depressed one-armed man a bottle of whiskey and set him loose to wander off by himself during the zombie apocalypse, and you pretty much signed his death warrant. If I was Schizo, I'd have even made sure Boozer took a good few hits from the bottle before I let him go home." And that was in a conversation about Schizo sort of engineering a lot of the deaths that happen and a lot of the bounties that you take on. Basically just getting rid of people that are in his way or that see through him, Boozer being one of them. I think it's a really, really good point.
I think it's fucking brilliant, actually. I think it's fucking brilliant. I'd never thought of that. And I don't believe there's anything in game that backs that theory up, except what we know about Schizo and his MO of disposing of people that he sees as annoying, weak, or too strong. Either somebody who's too weak to keep in the camp because they can't do anything for the camp, or
like
anybody
Lisa?
who's right, or even somebody who's too strong to have around the camp because they won't be bowled over by him. So I think that is absolutely fucking brilliant. And I remember I read that post, and I remember he mentions how Skizzo would have had a line ready. Okay, let's say you give Boozer this bottle, and it's exactly what he needed. Just go burn off some steam, catch a good buzz, relax a little bit, and you come back to camp like, okay, I'm better, guys. Let me get over my hangover, and I'm better, So, Skizzo would have had a line ready for that about, I thought he needed some help to burn off some steam, so I helped him out. I got him a bottle. And the flip side of that, if Boozer, goes out there and gets eaten by a horde, then Skizzo would, of course, be, I don't know shit about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep.
I don't know anything about what bottle of liquor. I don't know anything about that. So I think either way, he would have had a line ready. And that's one of those little details, maybe that's cut content that was supposed to be there all along, but, we never got to see it proven in game.
Perfect. Just typical Skizzo. It's so great that saying the same thing I said before. There's so much going on in this game with all of these characters.
Yep. So deep and so nuanced that almost any theory you come up with that's reasonable, hell, it might be true,
Let's talk about the final showdown and how Boozer, he goes through his whole arc. Surviving isn't living, finding his reason to live, finding his identity again. And then once he's done that, Deacon has the whole big showdown with the militia coming up. He knows he needs to go back and get Sarah. And of course, Boozer, loyal to the end. I'm going to help you, brother. I'm with you. Perfect wingman. He is so committed to the mission and just never even questions it.
Yeah, right. Like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. So before we move to that, though, one thing real quick about the drunken Boozer storyline where he makes it to the end of the road and there's the horde there and Deacon has to go down there and, he uses the line, hey, is this how we're going out?
Right.
Because we're going together, let me grab a bottle. Let's go, let's do this. This is how we're going out. And then he manages to get Boozer on the back of the bike. And the mission there is to race back to Lost Lake and get Boozer back to camp so he can sleep off his hangover. During that mission, have you ever let the horde follow you all the way back to Lost Lake?
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a good idea. It was not.
And it is not a good idea.
It does not work out as planned. Because you can lead hordes to the camps. I do it up at the farm, that one that's the feeding ground up by the farm. You can
the
lead
River
that.
Flow Farm, River Flow Farm horde or something, I think.
Yeah, and you can lead them over to the farm, and the guys on the little gun towers, they'll take out that horde for you. That's great. But you lead the Boozer horde to Lost Lake, and you just get overrun. If you don't make it in time, they don't even let you in.
Right, they'll shut the gate on you. Yeah,
they're just like, nope.
Like, well, you guys didn't make it. Sorry.
And then what you do is you go through, when they do let you in, you go through the gate, and the horde just like climbs up and gets
swarms
into the gun
around
towers
the gate, everything.
And you can't get off the bike. I wanted to get off the bike and help them. And I'm just sitting there with Boozer watching everybody die.
And because you're on a mission where you've got a passenger, you can't pull your sidearm either.
Right.
So you can't fire your sidearm. You can't get off the bike. Literally, all you can do is just kind of drift around in circles. And there's only one guy in the tower who's actually firing his weapon, actually doing his job. You've got another cat standing off by the infirmary that's just standing over there literally smoking a fucking cigarette. And then you've got another one that's just kind of walking around doing nothing. And
it's like they didn't design the game for dumbasses like us to try that out. They're like, no, you'll either get eaten by the horde or you'll make it.
I think they did plan for that, and here's why I say so. Because who's in charge of security at that camp?
Skizzo.
Skizzo is in charge of security for that camp. And notice how the security kind of sucks. But you got one fucking guy who's actually doing his job, and everybody else is probably like Skizzo's buddies. They're the people that Skizzo had talked to about taking over the camp and taking the camp away from Iron Mike. So he's maneuvered the security staff there at Lost Lake to mostly be his buddies who are tight with him. But there's one fucking guy who's actually on the team and willing to protect the camp and do the job. And that's why he's there. So obviously I'm making this shit up as I go, but it sounds reasonable, right?
Well, no, there's evidence to back it up. You know where the security is really good?
Where?
Around Schizo's house. You ever tried to get into Schizo's cabin?
Yeah, I did see that on Reddit the other day, but I had never noticed that personally. Once he's free from the cabin, there's still soldiers there.
No, way before that. Anytime you arrive at Lost Lake, go to Schizo's house, and there's at least 3 guys guarding the doors.
No
and when you walk up, they're like, "What do you want? What are you doing here?"
No shit.
Yeah, they give you attitude. They do not want you there. And it's like there are more guards around Schizo's house than there are around the perimeter of Lost Lake.
Around the fucking perimeter. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely have to check that out. So I did learn something new today.
Yeah,
I mean, that before.
There's nothing you can do with it. They just give you the line and then you move on, and it's like you can't interact with them.
It's a cool little detail, nonetheless. Yeah. All right, so there's 2 ways to look at this. You know, on the one hand, I am so glad this story was not written by George R.R. Martin. Because Boozer wouldn't have made it, man. You know, you have to have that one sacrificial death so that the other main character can survive. And
I'm sorry, but if George R.R. Martin had written this, Boozer would have died a long time ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
They all would have. Sarah would be dead. Deacon would be dead.
Yeah,
who fucking knows what character would be following?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Schizo gets to be king.
For a little while until he gets poisoned.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but yeah. So I mean, there's the one side of it there where one perspective is that, oh man, this is so fucking cliche. He managed to live. Really, how did he survive that? That's ridiculous. That's just cliche. But the other side of it would be, I think it would be kind of cliche if they had killed him, you know, because I mean that's what you expect in a gritty, realistic kind of post-apocalyptic story. Yeah. You kind of expect at least somebody's got to die.
The martyr, the honorable self-sacrifice for the greater good.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Deacon is able to find and free his wife from the militia, but at what cost? At the cost of his best friend, his brother. Yeah. So, and I get, sure, that's one perspective. That would have been one cliche. But I think it's really much better that they went with the decision to let him live because why not have a happy ending? We fucking fought for it. Deacon fought hard enough to get there, and have a positive resolution at the end of the story. Yeah. So I'm glad they went with that cliche and not the other cliche.
Same. I mean, I did think it was a bit of a cliche that he survived. But you're right. It would have been a cliche had he not survived. Like either way, mm-hmm. The idea that he had to be in the truck to deliver the thing, it was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
It's similar to the helicopter scene where you can make a reason for it, but it's really essentially just a plot device.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Boozer's battle with depression. I just thought of something else. You mentioned him driving the truck, and I think it's so cool. Ricky was able to fashion a prosthetic arm for Boozer from a fucking ice cream scoop. So that he could drive a big rig and you drive the truck to deliver the bomb. And it's got a prosthetic arm made out of a fucking ice cream scoop, man. Surely they could rig up either a modified trike style motorcycle and or a modified prosthetic for his arm that would allow him to pilot a motorcycle again.
Yeah.
Because it's that moment where Deacon brings Boozer's bike back. And it's one of those, how sometimes you do something really nice for somebody you really care about and it kind of backfires and actually just kind of ruins things, Mm-hmm. And that's how it is. Deacon, he goes through all this trouble to bring the bike back and get it there. And at first Boozer's like, holy shit, man, you brought me my bike, dude. That's so awesome. And then he's like, wait a minute, I can't ride it.
Yeah.
This is a big fucking paperweight that's just staring at me, reminding me of what I can't enjoy anymore.
Yeah. Reminding me of who I was and who I am. Prided myself on being.
Yep. And who I can't ever be again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it would have been cool. Ricky is clearly very good at improvising. So I think if she could make him a prosthetic arm out of a fucking ice cream scoop so that he can drive a big rig, surely they can get the parts together to modify a trike and get him a prosthetic that would allow him to operate the controls of the bike. Gotta be. Because, we have, now I know it's an apocalypse. Parts are hard to come by, crafting materials are hard to come by, whatever. But that's technology that exists right now. There are amputee survivors who ride fucking motorcycles, It's totally possible.
Yeah, I mean, you could just modify the bike so he doesn't need to use his right hand.
Exactly.
I don't know, whichever's easier, either modify his prosthetic or modify the bike.
Or some combination of the two, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever makes it doable,
Yeah.
with the parts they're able to get.
You know what else just occurred to me? What the bike represents? It's, in addition to it representing the man that Boozer was who he can never be again, it also represents his failure in his mission to save Deke. Because his whole thing is, we're going to ride north. And now we can't ride anymore. How is he going to get Deacon north?
Yeah, right. Huh, okay. I didn't really see that. I was kind of seeing the connection once you mentioned going deeper with that. I was seeing the connection of that's also Boozer's last connection to Joni. From when they used to ride together. Yeah. So that's just another moment where he's like, fuck, this is just a big paperweight. This is nothing but a reminder of the man I used to be and will never be again, and things that I used to have in my life that I will never have in my life again.
Fucking hell. You know what? Boozer gets the short end of the stick throughout this whole story. Now I think about it, his story and Deacon's story are kind of mirror images or sort of
mirror
very
opposites.
Similar. But they're similar in the way of like, losing your loved one and dealing with the grief and the processing all of that. And then, Deacon gets to process it in various different ways and move through it and find his wife again and, gets to get an awesome motorbike because, you do all the upgrades and everything. And Boozer still doesn't have his wife, loses his arm, loses his ability to ride. He's like, what the fucking, almost kills himself. I mean, sure, he gets thanks for that, but like, he doesn't really come out any better at the end of it, whereas Deacon obviously gets everything that he wanted.
Yeah. And Deacon has women throwing themselves at him the whole time, too.
Oh my God. Hey, Deke, stay safe out there.
Yeah. Come back more often.
My favorite bounty hunter.
Yes. So I guess we.
My first playthrough, I didn't pick up on all. I mean, I kind of did a little bit, but I didn't because as a woman,
how could you miss it?
Well, I don't really listen to what the bounty. What are they called? The bounty collectors, the people in the kitchen, the merchants. I didn't really put much time into listening to them, so I guess I just didn't think about it. And then I get on Reddit and everyone's like, oh my God, Blair is totally throwing herself at Deacon and with Jezzy. And I'm just like, wait, who are these people? Who's Blair? Who's Jezzy? What the fuck? I'm actually on my current playthrough taking photos of all of those kinds of people, all of the little non-playable characters, the merchants, just people you find. Like I got a great photo of this guy in Lost Lake just chopping wood. Just like random people.
Some random dude. Yeah.
It's really fun. And you kind of get to think of like their stories, like those guys who are sitting in the little gazebo playing guitar. You get to think about their stories, and it makes it feel like these are real people with real backstories that really have a position in this world and have their own things that they yearn for.
Absolutely. The guy who plays those songs, he's an actual musician that I believe, now I'm struggling to recall details, but he was like a member of the Bend team and is also a musician.
I didn't know that.
God, what is that kid's name? If it wouldn't take you but just a moment to research it if you're interested in looking into it. But yeah, the person who plays those songs that they're performing in Lost Lake at the little gazebo there, that's a member of the Ben team, and he is an actual musician. He plays in a band and stuff. So yeah, that was some of his work. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. Again, millions of little details that you wouldn't notice if you weren't looking for it.
Right. Well, I would have loved to have had Jim Pirri, who plays Boozer, on the podcast, but unfortunately, he is a really busy man. But I did reach out to him, and he was wonderfully gracious and gave me the opportunity to ask him a question. Rex, out of the two of us, who do you think has the better voice to read his response?
You.
How about no? I'll read my question, and then do you want to read the response that he sent me?
Sure.
Cool. So my question was, Boozer seems on the surface to be a tough, prideful guy, but we learn there's more to him than meets the eye. How did you approach bringing him to life and giving us insight into his deeper layers, and how much fun did you have doing it?
All right. So I think it's fantastic that Mr. Pirri took the time to respond to that question and send you an actual detailed answer here. And this is Jim Pirri's response to that question. So as far as Boozer goes, I couldn't have had a better and more fun time playing him. Seriously, I loved so much about him as a character. His loyalty, his courage, his silly sense of humor, his love of dogs, his willingness to fight for what is right and to protect others, yet doing so as a flawed individual who dealt with struggles in his past like drinking, as part of a motorcycle club, shall we say, not being a choir boy, and present, coming to terms with being disabled and not being able to do certain things he used to do that also defined who he was. He was a wonderfully layered, yet straightforward character that John Garvin wrote, and I was honored to play. Honored, because he's the kind of person I wish I were. I have some of his qualities, but not nearly to the extent that he does. To prepare for him, basically, I just had to imagine I was a much better version of myself, the kind of guy I wish I were. It was fun and felt so good. I also got to pull on my deep Colorado roots a bit in terms of his down-to-earth sensibility and love of the outdoors and absolutely needing to be there, especially when he was sidelined into the camp. I'm also lucky enough to have a few really, really good friends who go way back that would do anything for me and vice versa. Basically, they are ride or die in their own way. And that helped me tap into that quality as well. Boozer is definitely one of my all-time favorite characters, and I will always look fondly on both the experience of playing him and how proud I am of the finished game. It's the only game of mine that I've played through twice. The experience was so much fun, partly because of the amazingly talented group of people I was working with, acting-wise, as well as the incredible, badass wizards of Bend Studios and Sony, some of whom I'm still friends with to this day. But it was also fun because I got to pretend that I was in a post-apocalyptic world riding motorcycles and killing freakers. I mean, come on. Professionally, it doesn't get better than that. Thank you, Mr. Pirri.
It was so nice of him to take the time to write all of that out. It was an incredible response. And I hope that he's listening to this episode and that he knows how much love there is for him, how everyone fucking loves Boozer, and just everyone's blown away by his acting and how he brought Boozer to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. He really hit the nail on the head there, because just like my first impression of Boozer was that he's that guy who sees the best version of the people that he loves. You know, he sees the best version of you, and that's very similar to what Jim Pirri says as far as how he had to get into that character. Was he had to see the best version of himself, and that was how he got in character to play Boozer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was my favorite thing out of what he said. Because Boozer's done some pretty terrible things, and it's made really clear though that he is a good guy. He might be a drunk, he might be quick to use his fists, he might be involved in all sorts of criminal activity, but he's a man with a conscience and a code.
Yeah. The best friend you could ever have.
The best friend you could ever have. All right, before we wrap up, can you remind us about your live stream?
Yeah. So I do at least one live stream a week, Saturday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time or U.S. Dallas time. We're currently doing The Last of Us Part 2, but every Saturday night I'll be streaming from 8 to 10 as often as I can for as long as I can.
And it's so much fun. I love watching your live streams.
I enjoy it.
You're also doing occasional cyberpunk live streams?
Yeah. I'm honestly kind of surprised at how well I am enjoying Cyberpunk 2077. And I've been playing it so much that I'm like, well, shit, I might as well be streaming it, when I've got time. So yeah, I'm trying to increase the number of streams that I do, just kind of ramp it up a little bit.
Well, there's one thing I wanted to mention, and I'm British, so I have a hard time talking about money. It's not something we like to discuss or, God forbid, ask for. But a friend of mine told me that tipping and donating is really a part of streaming culture, and they suggest that I set up a way to accept tips, because I've been doing some live streams too, inspired by you, Spawnicus. And so I'm now on Buy Me a Coffee, which is a site, if you don't know, where you can throw a little money in the tip jar, so to speak, and it's all presented in this way like you're buying a coffee for someone. And there's membership levels if you want to make a regular monthly donation. Now, the other cool thing about Buy Me a Coffee is we're going to be selling merch on there soon. I don't want to say too much too soon, but everyone is really going to love it. And I want to give a very, very special shout out to Anthony from the Weird Crew podcast, who very generously bought me a coffee today. You might remember him from episode 7.
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah, it was your first live guest, wasn't it?
He was, yeah. So my first live guest, and also the first person to buy me a coffee. So I feel super humbled. He is such a cool guy, and his podcast is just amazing. It's this incredible kind of mishmash of topics, but it all seems to make sense together. It completely runs the gamut. And he has a Halloween episode coming up that's all about spooky stories that people have sent in. And one of the stories is actually going to be by me. About how
nice. You got to write a story for him.
Well, it's a true story about how I got into paranormal investigating, which is something that I do on the side when I'm not playing Days Gone, which these days, honestly, is never. But yeah, hopefully, it's a really spooky story, and it still gives me chills to think about it. And it is all, I promise you, 100% true.
Cool.
So you should check it out. It's going to be, I think the episode comes out probably on Halloween. I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully it comes out in the next week.
Now, what is the name of his podcast again?
His podcast is the Weird Crew Podcast.
The Weird Crew Podcast.
Yeah, and you can find it on, iTunes and podcast apps and Spotify and yada, yada, yada. All the usual. All the places you can find this podcast, you can find his.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. That little bit of just even the little donations. Just today on one of my live streams, I had a longtime friend, somebody I actually grew up with, made, and it seemed like a small, insignificant donation, but it bought my lunch today. So, I mean, it's just something that it helps to justify the amount of time that we put into these passion projects of ours, and get also something back out of it.
Also the cost. I mean, I don't know about live streaming, but you've got equipment you buy, microphones. True. I have to pay for hosting for the podcast, and I pay for Zencaster, which is how I record these interviews.
I did not realize that was a paid service.
Yeah.
So you have actual overhead costs that you have to cover.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
All right, I think let's leave this episode there. Thank you so much for being here and getting in deep with Boozer. This has been a really fun conversation. You can email me your thoughts, comments, opinions, and counter-arguments at daysgonepod@gmail.com. You can also find me moderating the Days Gone subreddit. Thanks for listening. Weaver out.